and out of good, still to find means of evil. Milton. Hell, a vague remaining corner of the primeval darkness. Satan alone. His figure becomes gradually visible, outlined against the blank darkness by the dim grey light which emanates from it, or more properly, of which it consists. He is seated at one of a long empire sofa, very much in the pose of one of Michelangelo's Medici dukes, resting one arm on his knee and his chin on his hand, deep in weary and mysterious meditation. A brief silence, during which Satan's figure becomes, while remaining dim and disembodied, a little more visible, showing that he is dressed very much like that Michelangelo's statue. Shadowy wings seem folded behind him. Knocking is heard, and a strange bark as of several wolves. 3 different notes make a kind of chord. Satan, another bore. This endless interviewing of silly human passions is enough to spoil the pleasure of my great coming, the performance of my Ballet of Nations. I thought I had given instructions to all my personnel and might enjoy half an hour of solitude and silence, for Satan, though lonely, is never let alone. Well, let surplus detain them at my doors. The barking approaches, and which is at length heard the voice of a fine rolling
On May 29, 1913, the cultural elite of Paris set out with great expectations for the world premiere of Rite of Spring, a new ballet by composer Igor
a
Stravinsky.
fine contralto of Cleo, muse of history. The muse, down, surplus, down, good little doggy, good little dog. It is only good old Cleo, who has brought in a nice little sop of honey lies.
Whistle started, then hisses, boos, and howls. A riot broke out in the box seats. The Rite of Spring became the most notorious ballet in history. Provocative and modern with a vengeance, it announced a chaotic new world.
Now down, surplus, down, good little dog, good.
Was a
So,
glimpse of the larger
it's only
forces
old friend
of
Cleo,
change
who has brought her a nice little sop of honey
ready to
lies.
explode the next summer with
Muse of history! I had quite forgotten our appointment. There she is, the irreparably classic and never forgetting her plastic poses, indiscreet, beyond all other immortals, and of course, an hour before her time. Still, my performance needs her reporting.
The war they fought would achieve none of its planner's goals. Instead, it would sow the seeds of hatred, destroy and create nations, and shape the world we know today. In the summer of 1914, none of Europe's leaders expected to start the most destructive war the world had yet known. But they did. And the question is, why?
Indiscreet beyond all other immortals, and of course an hour before her time. Still, my performance needs her reporting. And although she is a fool of the first waters, she has rubbed shoulders in her professional capacity with so many celebrated persons that she may pass muster as intelligent. Since she had coaxed me my brief moment of privacy, let me amuse myself a little by mystifying her. The barking has ceased. Enter the muse with the marble impetuous of the victory of Sacramento, and very angry in an operatic way. She does not recognize Satan. She does not recognize Satan in the dark. Insolence! Insolence, I call it. I tell you, I am invited to attend your master, and I shall answer to him, wherever you are, for having kept me waiting out there with Cerberus. Hello! Hello, you there in the dark, tell my lord Satan that Cleo waits upon him. Cleo, muse of history, not to be mistaken for the newfangled impostor who makes free with my name to retail vulgar details about laws and institutions and the price of food stuff and eggs. Cleo, real muse of real history, sister of tragedy, and the impassioned lyric, and dealing only with these heroic, elevating and most often destructive. Alright, alright, alright! Don't be frustrated. No one would ever mistake you for anything scientific, my dear Cleo. The muse taken aback. The voice of Satan himself? She curries in several directions in the dark. Forgive me, Prince of Darkness, your kingdom seems even less well lit than usual. After the garden's modern world, I thought I had to do with some attendant fiend new to the service, while even Cerberus himself scarcely knew my voice. Satan has risen and shakes hands. 1,000 apologies, dearest muse. The fires of hell have long since been extinguished, for no one took them seriously in these godless days. Your precarious eyes will grow more accustomed to this dear primeval darkness, and after my coming, Ballet of the nations. The lights of earth will no longer offend you. Even their gloom and the touch of chaos will prevail. But come, let us have a look at each other, my excellent old friend. Satan increases the ominous light which emanates from his person, and is revealed like a tempestuous moon, thinly veiled in clouds, beautiful, archangelic, without age or sex, all-powerful, omniscient, sad, but with much sense of humor. Satan, pointing at the other corner of the Empire sofa. Come, sit where I can look at you, dear old Cleo. I am glad to see you.
En er alleen nog maar botten op de vlakte lagen. Maar op een dag kwam de mens op het idee om die botten open te breken, om te kijken of daar nog wat in zit.
Classic to even invariable key pattern on your hem. The same majestic embroiderment, like some ample bosom prima donna in a Wagner opera, with that incomparable contralto, luscious but rolling, suitable to handle, and not aged a bit. You are too good, my lord, and your ancient friendship does not see the ravages of time in your poor wrinkled face. Cleo, the muse of history, takes out a powder puff and applies it with a frank and delicate grace. But as to you, my lord, Satan, of all creative and creative forces, alone maintains unblemished youth. Satan shakes his head. The muse, anxious to make herself agreeable after a gaffe committed, and on entering looks around her for something to say. How truly restful is not this ancient place, this ideal retreat. I always say, for one, uniting in his person action, thought and fancy. Satan bows, one hand on his heart.
De partij die geen ander einde van dit verhaal kan permitteren. En als ze mij zullen ondervragen in een van de donkere kelders.
A good old place. Very good.
Dan zullen ze mij haar.
The only bit still left on the deep void and darkness whence life and lights arose to plague me and plague by me. You know it well of old. But such are the regrettable compromises with error to which professional men of letters and even muses are obliged, that you yourself, I noticed, have more than once described this house as quite brooding evil, as people with a myriad damned who encumber the world above with their dead carcasses and equally offensive living souls, to think that poets and divines have packed these restful solitudes with brimstone flames bogs of boiling mud, lakes of ice, viewless winds, all crammed with gargantuous deceased humans. Little did I guess, when I made all moralists vindictive, that not being satisfied with Satan makes of earth, this vindictiveness will intrude feeble copies thereof into his own dwelling, whence he sends evil to suffer and avenge itself above. Too true, alas, my lord. The literary trade is frequently obliged to make truth acceptable by standing it on its head. For instance, put what people call hell below when it is invisible above. The earth's surface, time it after death, when it's obviously present during life. But misrepresentations of these trifling kinds of crumbled rose leaves in the arch-fiend's bat, and forgive the indiscretion and so old friendship, you seem little depressed through they. Anything gone wrong? Oh no, Satan says, no, everything is as it should be. Evil hatchings everywhere. And in another hour triumphant through one half of earth, I am only bored. But that is not unusual with me. Bored, my dear Lord Satan? Why, you have invited me to report of the greatest pleasure performance you have ever staged. Yes. I truly think the finest. By the way, did you pass on my invitation to the ages to come? I have, my lord, and they will be in good time. That's right. Alright. They shall have front stalls, for they are more appreciative than the virtues of our audience, who always fall asleep when a performance offends their principles. But as to you, your seat is next to mine, as beseems the great recording muse. Oh, my dear Lord Satan, we are very old friends, Cleo. What would history have to record but for the doings of Satan? And save for your variant talents, what memory would there be of evil deeds? But come, let us have a little chat, dear old muse. There is still half an hour till the bell rings and we go aloft. Except your disembodied friend, the ages to come, no one will have admittance here below. Some of the virtues would doubtlessly enjoy seeing my quiet home, and its thin, dehumanized atmosphere makes them cough. And so as to the orchestra of human passions, they are always in training, and it is the ballet master's duty to summon them in time. All else is ready. I need scarce remind you that the real preparation for this new ballet of mine began long ages back. One almost say with the first wars begin, which, making men afraid, thought them to bring an aggression by their precautions of for self-defense, so that the necessity, pretext, and arguments for hatred have, like the painted scenery of an earthly playhouse, accumulated on my hands from generation to generation, ages to ages, eons to eons.
Dus ik wil het best doen, de klootzak spelen. Alleen wat ik me afvraag is, gaan we door mij een klootzak te vinden minder vlees eten? Minder vliegen, minder tekenen? Gaan we door mij een klootzak te vinden? Nee, misschien. Of zelfs voor de rechter te slepen deze klimaatcrisis oplossen. En stel dat Shell straks in hoger beroep schuldig wordt. Weet u wie er dan blij gaan zijn? Nou, laten we u eerst vertellen wie er vooral niet blij gaan zijn. Niet het klimaat, niet de aarde, niet de toekomstige generaties. Nee, de enigen die echt blij gaan zijn, die zullen winnen.
Ready to shift from side to side. Thus, in my coming ballet, you will recognize, not without amusement, themselves the same insults against Britain's Wirram comrades in arms, which Burke and Pitt had used against Britain's present-day allies, and the once frog-eating sympathetic murderers called French. And now the scene shifts of the press and the cabinet. That cabinet are busy above. Listen, you can just hear their hammering. and the arguments mongers have sent in all their last millinery.
Business case mee. Maar in
Millinery.
plaats daarvan probeert u met deze rechtszaak uw eigen aandeel in
And how
deze
is
crisis
ballet master Def, your gifted son?
als de
My nephew, I don't mind, dear Cleo. Present prejudice is sacred in my eyes.
zodat u zich
And I should hate to be cause of scandal to my weaker brethren. You ask how a ballet master Def? Oh well, we all grow old. And he, Def, has never had a good constitution to begin with. And then perpetual worry. All those doctors and social reformers spoiling his sport and almost throwing him back on the more telluric honors, shipwrecks and earthquakes and such like. Yes, indeed, we have had a dull time of it, and a difficult one, in that bourgeois Victorian age with people talking of peace, retrenchment and reform, and even practicing them a little. But this new century has brought back a nobler or more ideal way of thinking. Mankind is getting once more to recognize that man cannot live by bread alone. Yes, so his moral digestion is apt to become torpid from protracted peace and plenty, that man requires the heroic remedies of primitive medicine, vitalizing lies, alcoholic syrup, of catchwords and sound bites, wherein to swallow such materi medica as more than blush to mention fastings and bloodlettings, the drastic purges upon purges as Aristotle would prescribe by terror and pity. And such upsetting of the whole circulation as spiritual dervish and flagellants employed in order to restore the zest of life. Forgive my coarseness, dear muse of history. It is no longer every day I can converse with refined intellectuals like you. Philosophers and poets do, of course, join enthusiastically in my shows when, as in the coming ballet, the orchestra of patriotism is engaged. But at other moments my work lies more and just more with prejudice and dullness. If boredom were not part of Satan's doom, I sometimes think I should die of it, dear muse. The muse in its finest manner. Well, boredom is surely the nemesis of all great eminence of this mediocre universe. Satan, no, most amiable of sycophants. Satan is always bored, not through excess of greatness, but for a different reason. A different reason? Indeed, it is a presuming on your friendly condensation and the intense interest which history has always taken in what pertains to evil. Is it discreet to ask what kind of reason? Satan's table by one who knows him. Don't deny it, Cleo. You see yourself ready as my boswelly. The muse, modest but intensely delighted. Oh, my dear lord, my ambition never soared. Why not? Milton and Goethe and thousands of divines and moralists have published so many spurious accounts of me that I might as well, once in a way, give the word a little correct information about my humble self, to do so with your help, and will serve to while away the half hour still remaining until the curtain rises on my new ballet. So let us talk, dear Cleo. Are you comfortably seated? Satan shoves a footstool beneath the muse's feet. Always so thoughtful of his friends, our dear Lord Satan. Well then, Satan is bored because he never feels love. The world at large, not having the advantage of such delightful experiences as mine, has indeed always taxed your lordship with, shall we say, a trifling lack of loving kindness. Satan. And correctly, that however is not my meaning. There are other kinds of love, and then loving kindness, Cleo. Although the self-righteous of loveless moralist has talked as if that love of your neighbor, country, enemy, love of the poor by those who are well off. were the only kind of love, the muse actually, we are not moralists, my lord, but men and women are of the world. Satan. Oh, that is not what I'm driving at. No allusion to the daughters of men whom the sons of God found fair, and such like gossip, the notion that real love must be illicit, or at all events, such a virtuous person hide away in modest alcoves, is merely the inverted perjury of silly moderns. Love does comprise all that, whether preached from the pulpit or whispered with a wink, but love is something larger and transcends human relations.
Waar ligt de hoop? Dat is moeilijk tegenwoordig. Dat je gewoon niet meer weet hoe je moet helpen, omdat je al snel het verkeerde doet, of het verkeerde zegt, of verkeerde
Love
kijkt.
not merely of creatures, but of anything else, places, employments, aspects, ideas, and aims, targets. Love, which means attraction, attachment, preference, the power of delighting in whatever it may be. The mother's delight in her children, the thinker in his problem, the poet and the child in the bare sense and spectacle of life, the plain man's in all his plans and prospects. That is love, and love in the widest sense, and that is denied me. You notice I was bored. The secret of that eternal boredom lies in this. Satan, my dear old interviewer, though in all else omnipotent, is impotent. At one point, he cannot take delight. The muse does not know what she ought to say. A pause. Satan says, Satan cannot love anyone or anything. Satan's only manner of possessing, but he has also fashioned half mankind in his own jealous image, is to deny delight or use to others. For him to sense the power comes not in making, understanding or loving, but only in spoiling. Should I tell you what I am? The muse, I should esteem it is a great favor and of inestimable advantage for my future work, if you would, my lord. Then listen, Cleo. I am the power that wastes. Being unable to use, I render useless. Taking no pleasure in fruition, I smite with barrenness and more precious, rare and sorely needed. The more I waste, whatever it may be, earth and time, opportunities of joy and betterment, man's life, man's labor, and man's thoughts. But most of all, man's goodness, so that Satan's truest name might be the waster of human virtue. How deeply interesting, my lord. I trust it may not presuming too much of your kindness to ask your lordship for an instance or two in illustrations of the above remarks. Satan says, willingly, and since you are a muse wearing a key pattern and genuine classic on your frock, you shall have an instance of Homer. Though. You must correct me if my memory plays tricks with the quotation. It is Achilles speaking, farewell Patroclus, even in the house of Hades I am now doing all that I've promised thee. 12 sons of noble Trojans shall the flames consume along with thee, but the dogs, not fire, shall devour the flesh of Hector, son of Priam. I don't quite grasp the illustrations there, Lord Satan. It was cruelty. The wolf not quite purged away out of primitive men. Nothing was being wasted. Do wolves butcher prey which they cannot eat in order to avenge on their dead wolf? No, such virtue is human. Virtue, my lord? Surely. Loyalty through the dead. One of the virtues I greatly enjoy spoiling. And a virtue which, far from being purged away from modern man, is about to furnish me some sublime effects. but I will not forestall my ballet, except to tell you that one of its main themes is its leitmotifs, as Wagnerians say, is my dealing with just such virtue. The sweet and ardent loyalty of noble lads ready to die themselves and kill other noble lads, lest dear comrades should have died in vain. Loyalty also which makes the bereaved mother send her last son to that dead elder brothers may not feel forsaken. Well, that is virtue, my dear old Cleo, I will not deny, and of such sacred and much needed virtue I will take a vice. The muse, impressed but not quite sure whether she has really understood. A very original and dramatic notion, to be sure, my lord. And this leads me to correct what I told you just now. Did I say I took delight in nothing? That requires revision. I love sacrifice. The muse. You are a good and all gods share that taste. Satan. My sacrifices are genuine and wholesome, not wretched little cakes of grain or of incense, or the inferior cuts of sacrificial beasts, nor hearts uplifted in momentary fervour, mere tiny titches of what mankind produces for its own use and pleasure. My sacrifice leaves nothing behind them. Unlike all other gods, I claim the whole, and I consume it all. The furnaces of Moloch smoked for me. The muse is a little taken aback at Satan's sudden emphasis of manner and doubtful whether it is in perfect taste. The muse nettled. You are unfair, my lord. Even Milton, though only a poet, was taught by me that every superstition save his own, and his list was just a trifle sectarian, had been invented by your lordship, Satan. But neither your Christian Milton nor your classic self seems to have guessed that it is not the obscene rituals of Baal and Belial, nor the frenzy of mad fanaticism and monastic rule which brought the offerings most savory to my nostrils, not Iphigenia, her white throat cut like a garlanded heaver to produce a wind, not Jaboteus thought her bewailing her unwedded girlhood, not have been more the most spotless victims immolated on my altars. Not even the glorious army of martyrs, palmed and golden stoled, whose blood, oh rosy blood of virgins and of little children, was lapped up by my avenging hounds of persecution, making them ravenous for more martyred flesh. Not the countless multitude of uncanonized saints who, killing selves, breed selfishness in others. Not the myriad of heroes reckon them ever since wars began, who died for doubtful causes or no cause at all. I have received higher oblations, lambs more unblemished. I have bled for me. For all true sacrifice is sacrifice to Satan. The muse. You are most eloquent, my lord, but as so often happen nowadays with literary genius, you overstate your case and damage it by willful paradox, which is a precept of the commonest worldly wisdom that sacrifice is at times an excellent investment, whether for the next world or for this. And all moralists have thought, even the crassed Epicureans, that life insists upon it is almost every turn at it a good investment, whether the interest be paid is in heavenly glory or in earthly self-compliance, is not a sacrifice, dear Cleo. And as to what life demands at every turn, that is uniclitation and endurance, since every turn of life means discrimination and choice, preference of large to less, of future to present, of lasting satisfaction to brief and tainted rapture, and of a joyous uncertain adventure with its entrancing breathless and heartbeats to yawning security. Last but not least, life at every turn bids mankind renounce its appetite for its ease, for mankind's most abiding comforts, the standards of the human race. Nay, it often bids the individual man renounces his race, habits and commandments for the sake of that secret treasure and torment, his own conscience. Sacrifice such as this, as you rightly say, of profit. But it is in so far it is no sacrifice, but more postponement or exchange of desired things. Satan disdains such barter of good for better. He claims absolute obligation. My sacrifice is sheer loss, and the offering to my essential Godhead is waste. A pause. The muse does not know what she is expected to answer, but murmurs merely, "To be sure, of course." Thus all true sacrifice is to the power of evil, and I might add, often obtained by my twin servant, delusion and confusion, or in other words, passion, seeing everything through its own likes and dislikes, the likes and dullness, never seeing anything at all. It is most interesting to watch them at their work, heading mankind away from mankind's only efficacious helper, the harsh, responsive reality of things. Thanks largely to this incomparable pair of innocent liars.
You think God stays in heaven because he too lives in fear of what he's created?
I might say, without lack of modesty, that all of the gods I am the one who has received the hugest holocaust of wasted virtue, hecatombs compared with which all the bulls and rams offered in Solomon's temple, all the superb butchery which smirch in the marble fairness of the antique world, are of one more account than the minute grain of incense which a village acolyte throws on the live coals of his tinsel censer.
Right now, the most influential member of NATO seems to be Putin. Because his whims have the power to block NATO decisions.
Alle drie de gasten hier aan tafel. Wij beginnen met Geert Mak. Het meest invloedrijke lid van de NAVO is op dit moment Poetin, zegt president Zelensky. Heeft hij een punt?
Ik denk dat hij daar gelijk in heeft, ja. Het zegt hij scherp.
The reality of things, thanks largely to this incomparable pair of innocent liars, I may say, without lack of modesty, that of all the gods, I am the one who has received the hugest holocaust of wasted virtue, hecatombs compared with which all the bulls and rams offered in Solomon's temple. Hecatombs compared with which all the bulls and rams offered in Solomon's temple, all the superb butchery which smeared the marble fairness of the antique world, are of no more account than the minutest grain of incense which a village acolyte throws on the live coals of his tinsel censer. The muse, but at that rate, forgive me, my dear Lord, Satan, but history has to return the gauntlet of much impertinent why and wherefore. But at that rate, how explain that this small world still contains something, life, wealth, or virtue, which has not been wasted in your rights? R-I-T-E-S. Right. Heer Rieters. The question is legitimate, and alas, contains an answer fatal to my greatness. Waste, dear Cleo, is an inconvenient so-called law of nature. tends in its very essence to waste itself away.
We zijn echt, zoals dat heet, slaapwandelaars. Het is ook, en in die zin heeft die rare fans wel gelijk. We hebben inderdaad ook intern een heel groot probleem. En onze democratie wordt inderdaad bedreigd, maar op een hele andere manier dan hij dat ziet. Er zijn echt partijen en opkomsten die ook die scheiding van der machten en vreedzame machten.
And then there was a sacrifice in which, well planned though it was daring attempted, Satan did not succeed. You recollect the business of the tree of knowledge of good and evil? Recollect it? Why, I recorded not one but several conflicting accounts of the occurrence, especially the one now authorized and the older one official among the Chaldees, from whom our enterprising Jewish plagiarist took it merely to change its bearing. And as so often happens, when a man of letters then theologians work on each other copy. And then since you have alluded to this justy popular story, I can't resist the opportunity of asserting once for all that what precisely among such conflicting versions really was your lordship's part in that, shall we say, but bad business? Bad certainly for me, dear Cleo. Was it so bad for you, my lord? Perhaps not all you aimed at, but surely you scored something, brought death into the world and all of our woe, etc. That was not to be despised? Of course not. It moreover brought me, as it figured in that medieval legend which makes the self-same tree serve for the wood of the true cross, brought me, though unsuccessful, the sublimest sacrifice my altars ever gloried in. The Muse, knowingly, that has long since been my view, and sundry early Christian theologians nearer the source, but since branded as heretical, went so far as to declare that it was like your lordship that the deity found himself obliged, like the patriarch Abraham, to offer up his son. This circumstance has indeed made me suspect that the tree in question would not have really been planted by the Creator like some heretical cultural exhibit intended to be looked at but not eaten of. The Muse hesitates, looking at Satan with the embarrassment of a person not certain of having guessed the truth and still less certain whether the truth will be welcome. Satan contemptuously, God neither planned for nor forbade its use. So far your guess is right. The Muse delighted. I thought as much. Then, your lordship must forgive my indiscretion, but history's greatest joy is, after all, that of the occasional shrewd look through a millstone. Then such really was the case. I mean that he was not being planted by God. I must have been planted by... The Muse looked at Satan as much to ask by you. In short, in other words, it was planted by... Satan, suddenly to the Muse, amusement and almost consternation. By man, and man's wife, women. The old Creator gave the seed, but his other seeds, the original multitude-fold power scattered it, broadcast to lie dormant, or quicken or perish, as might be. Man saved it from the vast indifferent lavishness, and like the ear of the wild weed, put it in those chosen soil, watering and cherishing as it sprouted, that he might eat its fruit and his children shelter in its shade. To be sure, this precise particulars had somehow escaped my memory. History really has too many things to remember. You were not there, my dear. I was, so I will give history a little lesson in her own subject. The Muse, nettled but inquisitive. Your lordship's conversation cannot fail to be instructive. Well then, this is the story of the tree of knowledge. In the beginning, which had no beginning, more timeless, aimless, chaos and old night, creation stirred, creating its own powers, that multifold of quickening forces, making for shape from substance and for soul from motion. I was not born yet. The muse, still irritated. That much is not unknown. You were an afterthought, my dear Lord Satan, as benefits a rebel. Not a rebel, Cleo, but like many you pass me such a staunch conservative. I opposed the coming change. Loyal to the chaos and darkness who had given me birth, I resolved to turn this newfangled order into anarchy. So when soul quickened within body, I saw through clogging it by body's clinging habits, and in return, unsettled secure instincts with half-fledged reason. And in return, unsettled secure instincts with half-fledged reason. Man was not yet, hence neither good nor evil, but in the lowest Brutus already pain and pleasure emerged, the great creative pulse determining the life's tides, and at once I seized upon them for my purpose, employing pleasure to increase pain. Then, as your Milton put it, I sought in good the means to evil as soon as I good and evil came along with man. And to this purpose I sought to turn that tree planted from God's seed in God's great park, warping its growth. And when it grew despite me, filling its fruitful branches with chimeras and harpies of all foul kinds. That is truly interesting, my lord. But may I point out that your lordship's nomenclature lacks a trifle in precision. At one moment you can call the tree in question tree of knowledge, and at another tree of good and evil. They are the same, for unknown good is not good, nor evil evil. Words bestowing man's choice and answering to man's needs. I see. That would account for man's planting that particular tree instead of, well, your lordship. Satan looks at the muse in amusement. Instead of me, dear Cleo. Oh, history, you are the greatest goose, silly goose I have ever guessed. Why, the tree planting means by doom, however long postponed by manifold arts. That tree, why, I've attacked it with 100-fold devices. Droughts, hurricanes, and loathsome parasites, and obscene snouts of devils turned to swine. Its bled, I've bled its sap, stripped of its bark, seared roots and branches with frost and fire. Urge man to cut it down, lest it should prove you pass and usurp and strangle all his children in its growth. I've borrowed all Joe's official lightnings to blast it. I've seen it parch and wither, branch drop off other branch, crop mildew after crop, but alas. Only to note with anguish new blossoms and ever unexpected shoots. I, Satan, plant that hateful holy tree. Oh, Cleo, Cleo, that even you could think. Why, that tree which claps with 100 branches the winning heavens is at the same time delving its million roots and rootless deeper further into chaos and darkness, narrowing and squeezing this hell of mine till it becomes no bigger than these pretty little hands of yours. I will tell you a secret, Cleo. Absurd as it present sounds, someday there will be no more room for Satan. Indeed, that is it. I own a most disheartening superstition and accounts for a slight vein of my, I call it, morbidness, which I have grieved to notice in your lordship's previous remarks. I must not, however, hide from you that have been rumors to the effect of Satan's being, well, more correctly described as long-lived than as immortal in the literal sense. If this be true, let me remind you of saying of that enlightened ruler Theranosthus, eat, drink, to be merry, and be merry, the rest is not worth a fig. Satan ironically pressing her hand. Their gossip history, not Job's comforter, but Satan's. The Muse, and think what opportunities you still have before you, although you have made clear to me that is a case, as the poet so charmingly puts it, of gathering your rosebuds while you may. A European war lasting for years may surely be accounted such, for that if I am correctly informed, is the subject of the new ballet, to which you have so graciously invited poor old Cleo. Satan kissing his fingertips gallantly to mwah, just so, my liege of life, though good of many thousand years, is sure thing shrinking with every great success of mine, like the peau de Chagin in Balzac's romance. I may, however, tell you that there is another and more pressing reason why I have hurried on this great new spectacle. The present moment is eminently propitious. I am told by one or two leaders of modern thought who frequent my saloon that mankind has attained amazing control over science means without so far inclining of science discipline and aims. 20th century men appear to be slum and warehouse savages, retaining the worship of all the good old tribal fetishes of racy obscene emblems, and carry on their ancient cannibal habits under newfangled and decent names. Yet at the same time wielding thanks to some dozen men of genius. Waste of genius, waste of science, there you have a trifling sample of my sport. The Muse, not to be interrupted, wielding, as I said, appliances which, without enlarging men of heart, abolish space and multiply all brutish powers 1,000-fold. If this account is true, no moment could be better suited for a dance of death, such as the poor, unsophisticated Middle Ages never imagined in their most celebrated nightmares. Satan, who has politely suppressed a yawn. Yes, you are rightly informed. Yes, this benefits the Muse of history, but that is not the most urgent reason for hurrying on my monstrous entertainment. Between you and me, in the very strictest confidence, dear Cleo, my ballet master Death is growing old. You have hinted something to that effect, and I confess that I have myself noticed, not without the deepest concern, that our genial friend has been looking anything but well of late, and seems to be losing some sense of his faculties. He is laid to have been a great dog in his prime, loving in excess for its own sake, and is whispered addicted more and more to eccentric pleasures. Such lack of self-restraint tells, alas, even on the most robust constitutions in the long run. Dear old ballet master Death, un vieux marcheur, so as the French classics say. And now getting on pure gaga, I fear. Yes, still pretty spry, but tubitic and threatening with creeping paralysis. His reconstitutions, though I say it would should not, was really never really good. Sin, his poor dear mother, was always somewhat of an invalid, and the intermarriage of very close relations does not, alas, result in robust offspring. Well, I shall be the first to suffer for these pedicles of my youth. My poor old nephew, alas, my dear Cleo, our dear incomparable ballet master Death is not with us for very much longer. The Muse, you have my deepest sympathy, your, well, more than paternal anxiety, but there is no real danger. I mean danger of, surely, I see as everyone must see the ballet master Death is no longer what he was, and at science I begin to understand the prejudice you show against the theory of knowledge as almost as an Irishman might say, being the death of him. He has been warned off, one pestilence after another. Famines are growing scarce, and except in the mystic Orient, religious massacres are everywhere marked. Trespass, such constant interference cannot fail to tell on his sensitive nerves, and spoils Death's temper, which was never very good. But I am glad to remember that in his case you need never apprehend the very worst. Death, at all events, can never die outright. He owned the creative powers, even vital, as my friend Bergson calls it, are the two immortals. Not this death, not my ballet master, my jester is in ordinary my rowdy boon companion, my incomparable, atrocious, grim, leering, lewd, worm-eating scarecrow. He, alas, can die. And to my sorrow will, the immortal is the other. The other what? The other death, the true one. For although history has not grasped that secret, our ballet master merely usurps his name and functions. The news scared. In that case, what on earth is this ballet master's real name? He has too many different names to be called by any single one, unless that name is horror. He is wasting, sickness, pestilence, famine, contamination, crime, and war. That being the case, men, in speaking of him, more often use and profane the sacred name of death. This one, my ballet master, is, as Milton indiscreetly printed and published, a very near and dear relative of mine, born in my sadder days of sin. Another very near relative. All of us children and grandchildren, more or less incestuous, as you know, of the primeval chaos. Believe me, dear Lord Satan, I had no intention of raking up such intimate family details. But tell me about this other one, this true death, since you have called it that. The true death, he has been my enemy since the beginning. Like me, he is an archangel, but mightier, great natural death, twin of sleep and foster brother of love. He was born by virgin birth, of life herself, and the marshal of life's triumphal progress. He is not often seen of men, although he works obsequiously among inanimate things, and his serene face shines through the autumn woods. And thus it comes about that my ballet master usurps his path and name. Yet at times poets and sages have caught glimpses of his tender eyes, and in the brief lulls of evil, when light irradiated some tiniest corner of the world, favored peoples have taken brief visions of him, or heard the quiet rustle of his wings. The true death is that grave, gracious genius, brother of sad, sweet Hermes, who conducts the souls carved by Ionian masons on the great pillars of Epimetheus, naked and winged and lovely, marshalling life's slow triumph. For he it is who makes room for newcomers in just turn, securing the world for youth and betterment. He also brings perfect peace to those whose other wishes have been filled brimful of cruelly denied, and the leads by the hand that love, who often lurks unconscious till lust awakens it through sweet solemn plenitude. Such is the true death, the natural, beneficent, and also the immortal. Satan pauses, passing his hand across his brow. But with him the muse of history, Satan has now struck. And now the moment nears when we must ascend from this silent nest of brooding evil to meet my death, Satan's obscene, uproarious ballet master, whose manifold pranks convert in earth into the real hell which city mortals fable here below. Is there anything you would still ask me to explain, good old Cleo? Yes, that is indeed, my lord. Yes, we have talked so much philosophy, very instructive, no doubt, but just a little bit too abstract for my taste, that I have just no opportunity of so much as inquiring the title of your new ballet and the names of its performers. I understand it is to be serious, not comic. The greatest tragedies, Creole, being founded on error, are never without an element of the grotesque. But this ludicrous side always escapes those who take part in them. For if they saw the full absurdity, they would refuse to act these frightful scenes. They take it seriously, poor creatures, and no wonder but for you, dear muse of history, and your friends of the idle ages to come, this ballet of the nations, for that is the title, will be the unending source or rhetoric mistaken lessons, and of such voluptuous horror as trifle the Vestal Virgin in their cushioned seats high above the arena. And I doubt whether your elevated taste, but I forgot, do you consent to anecdotes, will quite appreciate the preposterousness which underlies it all. But to return the corpse, the ballet is of course composed of the various nations, as the name imports, for the necessary music. I've chose band. I have a choice band of human passions, those who hide their face and are criedly to be distinguished persons like yourself, and the other who go handsomely masked and stilled. Some also of the simplest, purest, noblest idealism, love of adventure, pity, and indignation. Above all, heroism. And patriotism, first and foremost. Nay, patriotism is the collective name of the whole orchestra, whom I'm trained to these performances. Human passion, splendid or sorbid, delicate or nasty, all seated cheeks by jowl, playing their instruments without whose steady flow of sublime music and nerve-rending din the nations could not dance their dance of death, obedient to my great ballet. Master's baton, to keep his music up, drink. Human passion, splendid or soul, delicate or nasty, or seated cheek by jowl, playing their instruments, without whose steady flow of the sublime music and nerve-rending din the nations could not dance their dance of death, obedient to my great ballet. Master's baton, to keep this music up, drinks will be handed round by my well-trained lackeys of the press and pulpits, hot and acidic, of for coarse palates, or heady and full of fuddling fumes, also subtler ones, such as make everyday trifles seem to the opium dreamer fast and rainbow wonderful. Plentiful, deep draughts of words and evermore words and dowels, concocted in my special distillery by learned recluses with like those white-robed monks who manufactured fairy liqueurs to remote alpine glands, thus, as I hope, or else by other arts, some dry among the virtues will leave their stalls and join in with my band. And those too shocked to join will drop to sleep and dream of man's purification through suffering. Satan laughs quietly, the muse considerably louder, clapping her hands. The muse, one word more, my lord, is the priceless biographical notes with your kindness has vouchsafed me. I remark that as interviewers put these things, your favorite pastime and chief business in life, says Satan. The muse, consulting a memorandum, is, have I got it down correctly, is Satan impatiently, is waste. Keep that well in mind, dear Cleo. It is the key to all I ever do, and therefore to my coming ballet. The muse, meticulously still fingering her notes, It was of course with reference to the coming performance that I inquired waste. Well, of course, waste of human life, wealth, tears, properties, liberties of all kinds. Moreover, Satan interrupting, and more to my purpose even, waste of intelligence, unselfishness, and effort which should have rid the world of manifold other evils. The music going on particularly, moreover, as those fashionable cranks who call themselves eugenists tell us, waste also of the inheritable figure of the race, only slickers and varicose persons, and such as make war profits or are elderly remaining over to reproduce the genius homo. Is that correct, my lord? Satan, as far as it goes, but such gross and obvious wastefulness is not my highest aim. Satan is no materialist, my dear muse. No, for him, mere life and happiness must never be the things man puts most store by. You may have heard this doctrine preached elsewhere than here. In fact, by moralists and divines ever since the world began. I have heard it, yes, and I am happy to say I hear it still on all hands. But with the addition, saving your lordship presence, that this doctrine emanates, well, to put it plainly, from God. Well, that God, dear unsuspecting Cleo, was Satan in disguise. It is possible that history has not yet made a note of some, at least, or the many allies to which my business obliges me to have recourse from time to time. But to return, what were we talking about? Ah, to be sure, self-sacrifice. Well, I take my word for it. The great creative reality, whom man called God or nature, had no taste for barren flowers of virtue. It is Satan who grows them with much care and pride. I think I told you the lamentable fact that I am impotent to take delight in anything, with one exception. The odor of such sanctity as bears no fruit ravishes my disembodied senses, and as some beseems the saints in whom I nurture it, admits me back to heavenly joys, virtue for virtue's own sake. That is what I ask for, since to the genuine connoisseur in spiritual rarities, to the full-fledged moral aesthete that I am, the beauty of self-sacrifice must never be marred by base utility. My coming ballet will make that clear to you. You shall hear the devastating blast of indignation wings and pity's unforgiving sobs. You shall be shown young heroism, Radiant's face as blind as a stone statue. But I notice there is something more you want me to explain? The muse hesitating. Your lordship has been so generous of information that, in short, I fear my notes may present some slight obscurity or incoherence when I come to reread them. Is it asking too great a favor to say how deeply grateful I should be if you would repeat once more your leading definition of yourself? Satan, with the greatest pleasure, dictates, I am the waster of human virtue. The muse bows effusive thanks. But hark, Cerberus once more at his alarms. Go, dear muse of history, go, there must be your friends, the vain and bodiless, the most effective ages to come. Please open them. The muse disappears and bolts are heard being drawn. Meanwhile, Satan throws himself back wearily in his corner of the sofa, passes his hands over his eyes and mutters meditatively to himself. The Ballet of Nations, my new masterpiece, and as I sometimes fear, the great of its time-honored sort, well, if the last, let it be the greatest. If it be the last, let it be the greatest. the muse returns, introducing the chorus of ages to come, classically draped and veiled in the stuff that dreams are made of. The chorus of ages to come. Your very obedient humble servants at your archangelic lordship commands. They curtsy to the ground. Satan has risen to meet them and waves a gracious greeting to each number of the chorus. Do not speak like that. Pray, do not speak like that. Delightful ages to come. Why not half an hour ago? I was remarking to our illustrious friend Cleo here that besides her own there is no applause. I covet as much as that of your most alluring and elusive selves. And like her, you are much more than a mere audience. Though the most appreciative, history helps me in my shows with her so-called legions, which, as you know, always inculcate the grave untruth that there is nothing new under the sun. And history also makes it her business to keep old wounds from healing and sees to hatred flourishing like the green bay tree of victory. Thus the past, or what passes, muster as past. Collaborate with Satan. You disembodied ages to come represent the no less needed assistance of a no less apocalyptic future. The future which is always the future because it can never turn into the present, and which therefore possesses the unparalleled attraction of what can be pursued but never clutched. The same prestige in fact enjoyed in pious days by the old-fashioned kingdom of heaven, making man eager to sacrifice the peace and happiness of the tangible today for the sake of the peace and happiness of this unsubstantial tomorrow, spun like cobweb out of their sick little brains. But enough! Come, my infectious chorus of unrealities, come, great recorder of all that does and does not happen. Let us ascend from hell, brooding stillness to the world's theatre, which awaits you, its eternal patrons, in it lessee and manager, myself. Satan signs to the ages to come to troop off in front and follows, offering his arms to the muse of history. End of the first part. Part 2. The Ballet of the Nations.